What's up, guys? Doug Polk here. Welcome back for another episode of Poker Hands. Today we're going to be talking about one of the worst high-stakes beats ever seen on a poker stream I can remember. This might be number one. It might be the worst beat ever. It's certainly up there.
Pocket aces. 54,000. Playing some deep stacks.
Paul, I'm going tomorrow. 12. 12 o'clock. Probably won't see you.
Dan will be calling with two eights.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, good luck. Thank you.
Our hand begins at 1K, 2K with a $4,000 straddle because, I don't know, I guess 1K, 2K is just not high enough stakes. We got to make it a little bit bigger. Action folds around to the hijack, who looks down at King 10 of hearts. Definitely a hand you want to open, and he does to $9,000. Definitely the standard play here on about 80-ish big blinds effectively with the straddle. Now, Jungle Man, the cutoff pocket eights on almost exactly 100 big blinds here. I really don't mind a call or a 3-bet. I think I slightly lean towards a call, but I do think every now and then this hand is kind of nice to 3-bet. You knock the people out behind you. Eights is a hand where when you're up against one player, you feel pretty good, but up against multiple ones, you kind of start to have to hit an 8. So I don't really mind either play here in Jungle Man's shoes. He does decide to go ahead and set the trap and makes the call. On the action folds to the small blind, who looks down at pocket aces. Oh, sorry. I was getting flashbacks to my vlogging days. Anyway, aces does decide to make it 54,000 to go. Maybe a little bigger than I might consider normally. This is a 13.5 big blind raise over a 2.25 big blind open and call. Can't be bad. And I think one of the reasons why I lean towards slightly smaller is that there's not a lot of playability here post flop. So these players can't really call with too many hands given the stack sizes are all under 100 big blinds effective. On the other hand, there are a lot of hands that might want to just go for it pre-flop, and you do have a situation where you want to avoid two players calling with your range that wants to 3-bet. So seems like it's probably fine. Leon gets out of the way with King Deuce of clubs, and now back over to the hijack with King 10 of hearts. I think I'm probably calling. I mean, this is starting to get close, and that's what makes me not love this size. I think I'm calling, though. Suited Broadway hands typically have the playability. Good rule of thumb, guys, if you get 3-bet and you're in position, if you call with hands that are approximately 7s plus, 6s plus, suited Broadways, ace, king, maybe ace, queen from time to time, and then possibly some hands like 10-9 suited, you're probably going to be pretty good to go post-flop. I don't know what the nerds are doing these days with the fringe hands, but the point is King 10 suited, any suited Broadway hand, it's going to be at least a reasonable call 3-bet hand. And the way that it plays is kind of nice. When you hit a king, a lot of times players will very aggressively bluff that card. So I kind of like how it plays post flop. But regardless, pot odds and you could make a royal. He does decide to get out of the way. And now Jungle Man with the pocket eights. Another hand I think I like a call. We're starting to get close here, which really shows you how awesome it is to play full ring poker. But Jungle does decide to make the call and let's take a flop.
No. 8. Again.
And we just flop quad eights.
That's the 8-9. Date with an 8.
Any getting better?
Triton co-founder Paul is going to step away to let another player come in.
44.
And this is just disaster for Puna Ponson. They're playing. They started this hand for at least 400K.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
There's Santosh Suvarna taking Paul's spot.
The flop comes a very reasonable 8-8-6, and now the small blind has to decide how he's going to play this one post-flop. On paired boards in general, it does make sense to see a bet with a pretty high frequency because it's unlikely your opponent has hit something very strong, and your high pairs are looking quite good unless your opponent has 4 of a kind. So in this situation, I don't mind betting quite often. However, It can make sense to throw in some traps. A couple hands that would make a lot of sense to trap with are hands like aces, where essentially your opponent can have very little equity against you. If they do bluff, you have them drawing fairly dead, and then you're not too worried about overcards that could come on the turn or river. When you have a hand like jacks or queens, you want to bet, build the pot, get value from a hand like sevens, maybe knock out some hands that have equity against you. But if you're going to trap, I really don't mind doing it with a hand like aces. Not to get too into the nitty gritty, but one of the reasons I kind of like bet here with this aces specifically is that you do not have one of the suits on the board. And you're probably thinking, it's a rainbow board, who cares? Well, if you bet really small on the flop here, your opponent's probably going to float you if they have the backdoor nut flush draw. When you have the ace of spades, it's more likely that they have it. So it might make more sense to trap here when you have, for example, red aces, and look to bet when you have black aces. But you can't really go wrong with lots of betting here on this paired flop. He does decide to bet 1/3 pot, $44,000, and the action moves over to Jungle Man, who is hiding behind his trident. He brought a trident to Triton. I think I see what he's doing here. I think. With pocket eights here, doing anything other than call is just simply bad. There's no reason. You can, if you really wanted to have a lot of raises on the flop, which I don't really know if I would be looking to do, given that all of your opponent's overpairs are so strong and you don't have very many strong hands here on the flop to begin with. If you really wanted to raise, I'd probably recommend doing it with a hand like pocket sixes or maybe 8-7. But I think you should just play your whole range as calls you're in position. The pot's big. There's no reason to raise with good hands. You're going to get barreled a lot, and you have a lot of mediocre hands that are not happy with the situation. Anyway, he does decide to make the call, and let's take a turn.
Dan with the slow play. And that is an ace on the turn, and there is no way Punam Punsri has a chance to get away now. He's got top boat. He thinks he's trapping.
Great game.
Dan Cates is going to bet his quad eights, it seems. Reaching for chips. Wants to bet the turn to increase the likelihood of getting all the chips in by the river. Puts roughly a third pot bet in there. Smaller bet designed to, of course, get the ace to call, as well as those jacks, queens, and kings. And that Punam Punsri is just loving this, but he's actually only got one out to come back. Trying to feign weakness. $367,000 in the middle.
The turn comes an ace. I think we're looking at a mandatory trap situation now with aces, because it's super unlikely your opponent hit this. And if your opponent has a hand like 10-9 suited or maybe sevens that doesn't like where this is headed, it's a reasonable spot to bluff and try and represent that you hit this ace. Jungle could definitely have a hand like ace-queen suited, ace-jack suited, maybe even a hand like ace-6 suited. There are a lot of hands that can hit this ace, even though I don't think ace-6 suited would be banging the turn. The point of the matter is, Jungle is likely to bet with an ace for value, and he's also likely to turn a few hands into bluffs, and he does not really have an ace very often because you have aces. So he does check the turn. So far, I'm really liking this hand from aces. And now Jungle, he just simply has to bet. I think sometimes people get fancy here and they check back. Don't mind doing that every now and again. But one of the most simple and good rules of poker is this, guys. Don't make it too complicated. When you have good hands in position and they check to you, just bet your hand. Really simple advice. I know it's tempting to sometimes throw in the trap, but that's okay every now and then. But when you have good hands, you want to build big pots. And one of the biggest mistakes I see players that are lower tier players make. They simply trap too much. Build this pot, and Jungle does decide to do that, betting 77,000 here on the turn. I like Jungle's size. I think in this spot, a small size is nice. I don't think there's really much need to bet bigger than this. You're going to leave yourself, something around 50 to 60% pot on the river. Also, your opponent has a lot of hands that just hate this spot. If he has kings, queens, jacks, those hands are all pretty unhappy, and this size really takes advantage of that and lets you value bet with an ace. Back over to aces. Once again, we now have a spot you just got to call. Keep that opponent's range wide. You know he's bluffing. Although, unfortunately, he's not. Let's go ahead and take a river.
Backdoor flush does get there, but doesn't matter given their holdings. Dan Case, quick peek at his cards. Still got quad eights. Absolutely sick hand. Is gonna push it all in, and
The river comes the 5 of diamonds, aces checks once again, and now Jungle has nothing to think about but Vegas and the fucking Mirage. Sorry for the F-bomb there, guys. I want to apologize to my 1% of viewers who are under the age of 21 watching people gamble for millions of dollars. Anyway, Jungle thinks it over, gives a little Hollywood here, and gives it the two-handed WSOP style all-in. Aces calls and shows Jungle the bad news. But sadly for him, he's the one that's going to get some bad news.
is gonna push it all in, and Puna Prince are gonna get the bad news. Shows his aces.
Oh my god. Wow. Leon. Not full. Leon. Yikes. Leon. Huh?
Thank you guys for joining me today. If you liked today's video, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, like the video, show me some love. I'll see you guys again soon. Peace.